Yo guys, welcome back. We're finally doing the Vinland Saga review for part 3, which is the Eastern Exploration Arc, or Eastern Expedition Arc, or the Baltic Sea War Arc, whatever you want to call it. The third arc in Vinland Saga, and, after this, I'm caught up, so... I'm just waiting on the next Vinland Saga volume, and technically we already are in the Vinland arc, which, starts within book 12. So technically we already are in the Vinland arc physically, but it barely starts. So we're still, we wrap up the Baltic Sea War arc, or whatever you want to call it. I just call it the Eastern Expedition Arc, or Exploration Arc, whatever. Yeah. So we are nearing the end of Vinland Saga, and just a little bit ago, well, not today, like a week or two ago, well, maybe it was sooner than that, recently, I finished up Vinland Saga. I had read the first 3 of this arc, so volumes 8, 9, and 10, a little while ago, and then I fell off of it, took a little bit of a break, and then just recently, actually, and it wasn't a few weeks ago, it was earlier last week, when I just had a free day, and so I read books 11 and 12 back to back, pretty much. So yeah, Vinland Saga, absolutely love it, you guys know that, and yeah, let's talk about it. Before I go any further, I do want to say that if you hear any, noises and stuff in the background, it is because I do have a load of laundry going. I gotta clean the bed sheets and all that once in a while. Got clothes in there. So, dryer is, the laundry room is, on the other side of my bedroom, which is kind of whack. But if you guys hear anything, that's why. And, yeah. So firstly, I guess I'll just give a little bit of a recap of how the last arc ended, the Kettle Farm arc, or the Farmland arc. So basically, Torfin and Einar, after Arnhild's, or I'm gonna say Arn, I keep forgetting how to pronounce her name. Einar's love interest, after she dies, they promise to, create, or not create Vinland, but settle Vinland and create a country without war or slavery, just a place of peace. And then Torfin returns home to Iceland and meets with his sister and his mother, and all is good, and that's sort of where that arc ends. This arc picks up, though, and Torfin needs to find a way to settle Vinland, so he meets with Halfdan, who is the other lord, I guess, the guy from early on who one of his slaves escaped, and he was looking for it, and then Tor's bought the dead slave or whatever from him. That guy, Torfin has to get his help in order to fund his exploration. So, he is sort of challenged by Halfdan because he's given not money or really supplies, but he's given these narwhal tusks or horns that really are worthless unless you trade. And one of the only places that you can trade for them to actually get some good money is Constantinople. They give it another name. I think is it Milkgard or something, Miklagard, or it's something like that. Some a Viking word for it. I can't remember, but it's Constantinople, or modern day Istanbul. That they have to go trade in the Baltic Sea. So they set off with Torfin, Leif Erikson, and Einar, and Leif's adopted son, who they call Bug Eyes. His name is actually Torfin, but now that the real Torfin, who he was named after, is back, they just call him Bug Eyes. Also, we're introduced to a new character named Gudrid, and she's basically this girl who wants to be an explorer and wants to go out, but she can't. Nobody believes in her because she's a girl, and also she's betrothed to Halfdan's son, and so she's gonna get married. And when she was little, she tried to escape and do something similar to Torfin, hop on Leif Erikson's ship without him noticing. So she's, just trying to get away, and she ends up like stabbing Halfdan's son, whose name is Sigurd, who he's a recurring character within this arc. He stabs him and then dips, and now everybody's looking after her, and so she hops on their boat and she sets off with them, and she is now a part of the crew. Gudrid's escape also sets up sort of a secondary plot line with Sigurd, who, his wife attempting to kill him and escaping is like it's a disgrace. And so he talks to Halfdan about it, and Halfdan's like, all right, you're a disgrace. And so Sigurd takes it upon himself, and he's like, all right, bet. I'll go out and hunt down my wife, and I'll bring her back, and until I do, I cannot step foot back on this land, and I'll never come back until I do. So that's exactly what he does. He sets off with his bros, and he goes to hunt down his wife, and basically this is almost like a comedic relief aspect of this arc in a way, but it also sort of sets up like this cat and mouse type situation throughout this arc. On the way to Constantinople, one of the first places they stop is this island that turns out to be war-torn. It looks like an army has ridden through here, pillaged and burned everything around them. They're surrounded by dead bodies, and they end up stumbling across this burned home where there's like this half-burned dog that tries to get their attention. They go to the house, they open up this storage thing, and there's a woman there who is breastfeeding her child and is like holding, if I remember correctly, she's like holding out a knife or a sword or something, like she was going to kill an intruder. She's just trying to protect her child. She managed to narrowly escape, and basically she tells them to take her child, and then she dies. So the crew is tasked with now taking care of this baby, and also they bring along the dog, who they named, firstly, they name the child Carly. Right? I don't know if they name it or if the mother tells them the baby's name before she dies. I can't remember. But she was like really badly wounded, like she had got stabbed in the gut or something like that. And she was just holding out just long enough for them to show up. The baby's name is Carly, and then so they named the dog Carly's mama, because, this dog sort of takes care of the baby at some points. And so, those are two new members that join the crew after Gudrid. After being chased around by Sigurd, and Gudrid almost getting captured again, they manage to escape him, and they end up in Norway, where we are introduced to one of my favorite characters in Vinland Saga so far, a Huntress named Hild. Now Hild, actually I have the volumes next to me. I brought them down off the shelf so that I could look over and remember what exactly happened. Hild is on the cover of volume 9 here. Awesome character. Basically, she has like this crossbow that can kill bears. They end up in Norway, and then they almost get attacked by a bear or something like that, and then Hild kills it with one shot with her crossbow. And after a little bit, they're eating dinner with Hild. They made like a stew or something, and she starts talking about her past, and we learn that her father and like her whole village was sacked and burned, and her father was killed, and the person who killed her father was a 15 or 14-year-old wielding 2 knives who goes by the name Torfin. And our Torfin, just starts having like a panic attack. And we learn that, yes, he in fact did kill her father, and now she wants revenge. So she tells everybody, in this stew that y'all ate, there's poison in here. If y'all want the antidote, then Torfin has to come and fight me alone. This proves very problematic, because not only is everybody poisoned, but Torfin also is now living a life of peace. He refuses to pick up a sword against anybody, and, it's sort of his fault anyway. She's getting her revenge, he sort of sees himself in her, trying to get revenge for her father, who he killed, and he's trying to get his gain her forgiveness, but she just wants him dead. So they play like this again, like sort of a cat and mouse game in the middle of the woods, where she's blasting him with her bow, and he's trying to like dodge arrows and stuff. He gets shot in the arm and then like in the leg at one point, and he's pretty beat up, like he's losing blood. Torfin might die, and Einar goes after him. He's like, I can't sit back and let this happen. So he goes, even though Torfin's supposed to be alone. Einar shows up, and they're trying to help him out. And it's during this time, they're on their way. We get a glimpse into Hild's backstory. Basically, she was just a girl in this town or village, and she's like a carpenter. She makes inventions, and excellent with like making stuff. She uses her hands a lot and builds things. And one day her village is sacked by Skalad's crew, and they're after her father. And then they run into the woods. Their house is destroyed. Her father is with her, and then right behind them is Torfin. And then Torfin kills her dad, just stabs him right in the side of the head or the throat or whatever, kills him. And she's like, why did you kill my dad? She's just in shock. She doesn't know what's going on at all. And Torfin says to her, I am the hunter and you are the hunted. It's as simple as that. And that's what he says. And then she, he tells her to run off. Nobody's after her. They were just after her dad. And she better run off before, they come and capture you and rape you and sell you into slavery, pretty much. And so he's like, you better get out of here now. She runs off, and she falls off a cliff and just gets busted up. And she's probably asleep for days or a week even. But she wakes up, and she was rescued by this old man who's like a hunter. And she's got like a bandage over her eye, and that's where she gets like this dope scar over her eye. And basically, he just lives in the mountains and he hunts bears, and he works with her to sort of trains her to become a hunter. He reminds me of Yoda a lot, like Luke and Yoda on Dagobah. That's sort of what it reminds me of, gives me some of those vibes. Of course, I didn't have enough time to finish this video yesterday, so here I am this morning trying to get it cleared so I can put this video out. Anyway, one of the most important things about this master dude is that he uses a crossbow, and it's powerful enough to take down bears. That's one of the main things they do, is they hunt bears. And she tries it out for the first time, destroys a target, because before she was just using a normal bow. And so she destroys a target, and then when she goes to like pull back the cord, I guess, to reload the crossbow, it proved to be really difficult, and it's because she doesn't have the arm strength, I guess, and it's meant for like a stronger man to use the based crossbow. And so what she decides to do is she creates, since she's a carpenter and stuff, she makes not improvised, but like a crossbow that's made for her, so it's easier to pull back and just easier to reload and use while still being just as powerful. And so that's exactly what she does. She goes to the market, buys pieces, and puts it together and creates a dope crossbow. And then her master, she, over the time that they were together, she became excellent at hunting and all that. She's now just a great huntress, and they go out to go look for a bear, and then her master is like gored by a bear, and then so she has to kill this bear, and then now she like declares her revenge on Torfin, I guess. The whole flashback sequence ends and she has Torfin pinned. Like, she has like 3 arrows in his legs, he can't move, and she's about to put him down. And then Einar shows up, and then she's like, oh, you know, or you were supposed to be alone. And then Einar was like, I know, I showed up. Great Hild and Einar impression. And so basically she lets Torfin live, only because he like entices her with this idea of Vinland, about how he left that life behind, and what he's trying to do is create a land of peace. And so what she says is basically she'll allow him to live for now, but her life, or his life, belongs to her since she defeated him, and, you know, she's just showing him mercy. But if she ever fears that he will be killed, she'll put him down so that she can claim his life before anybody else can. So, you know, like we saw with Torfin and Askeladd early on, you know, when Askeladd died, Torfin wasn't able to claim his life. That was one of his big things. Like, he never got his revenge because Askeladd wasn't killed by Torfin, how Torfin wanted. So Hild, sort of in the same idea, I guess. You know, before she lets anybody else kill Torfin, she's gonna kill him first. So she'll get her revenge and avenge her father and family. So for now, she's letting Torfin live, and she joins the crew, and she's just sort of sitting around keeping a close eye over Torfin. It's around this time we also see the start of a new plot line, and that is the war in the Baltic Sea. And what exactly is happening is the role for like the chief or chief commander or whatever of the Jomsvikings is up for contention. So Floki, who's gonna die, he's an old guy, wants his grandson to be the chief, but there's somebody else, a guy named Vane, who has another claim, and so, but there are some people who want Torfin to even be chief commander of the Jomsviking. So Floki, hate that guy, he's a butthead, tries to get the help of Torkel, of course, my dude, the broski himself, to help him take down Vane and his forces so that they could, you know, secure the throne. Not really the throne, but like the spot of chief commander. So, but Torfin ends up in Yelling, I think the place is called. It's like a trade city or something like that. And they meet with Torkel's forces. Torkel's forces recognize him, and they sort of capture him. You know, Hild tries to shoot down a few of them, and she's like, I'm not letting you guys take him, he's mine. But they take him to Floki and Torkel, and he has to talk with them. It doesn't go over very well. He's like, you know, they still see him as the Torfin from the prologue, where he's just murking fools and just doesn't care. But now, you know, he's a much different man, he's changed. So they don't really get what they want from him, so Floki sends people after him to go kill him. So Floki's just trying to get him out of there. Because Torfin has a good claim to the chief commander spot, since his mom was like basically a Viking princess, since his grandfather on his mom's side was the chief commander. And like his mom was the chief commander's daughter, and the chief commander's brother, his uncle is, well, I guess great uncle is Torkel. So even Torkel has a decent claim, but Floki just wants him out of there, so sends people after him. But on the flip side, you go to Sigurd, Halfdan's son, is facing off against pirates in the Baltic, and fails. So he gets sold into slavery, and they actually meet and see each other in Yelling. You know, it's like a slave market, and he's like, that's Torfin, and then there's a whole thing that happens there. And I think, if I remember correctly, that's how Torkel's forces like turn their attention towards them, and then notice that Torfin's there. Floki's people, his men, end up chasing Torfin and his crew around. Torfin, I think, meets back up with his crew, and they're on their ship and they're being followed. So Torfin has Einar drop off himself and Hild on this island because, Torfin is the one who they're after, and Hild has to be with him since, she has to make sure he doesn't die. So Einar and them go off to like this other safe island or something like that, and then, the forces just follow Torfin, and Torfin ends up having to fight a bunch of Jomsvikings barehanded, just like with his hands, and takes out like a whole battalion of them pretty much, which is a really cool scene. But turns out within Floki's forces are Vane's spies, and are here to help Torfin, and they take him to Vane. They take Torfin to Vane, who's this old man, and he basically tells Torfin how he needs him to join him so that they can take out Floki, because Floki's just a bad dude. And he tells him, because apparently he didn't know this before, but Floki being the man who had Torfin's father, Tors, killed. And so Torfin doesn't know how to respond to this. It's a whole thing. But on the flip side, we have Sigurd, who's trying to fight the slavers and win his freedom back. And Torkel notices, and he joins Torkel on like his crew, I guess. And then we see Torkel, who is fighting for Floki at the moment. He's about to show up where Vane is and fight Vane's forces, but one of Vane's men turns out to be one of Floki's spies, and that's when we're introduced to a new character who's an assassin by the name of Garm, who's one of like the main antagonists of this arc, because he's just the complete opposite of Torfin. Now, Garm is just insane. In a lot of elements about him, he reminds me a lot of Torkel. He just wants to fight. He thinks dying in battle is the best thing that you can do, and it's just thinks that he's cocky and thinks that he's the strongest, but he's also small and quick, just like Torfin. So in a lot of ways, he's the same as Torfin, but he reminds me of like Torfin in the prologue if he had the attitude of Torkel, if that makes sense. But he fights with like this spear that detaches and turns into like two spears. He's actually on the cover of book 10 here. So yeah, Garm's just insane, and he ends up killing Vane and like beheading him and pretty much ending the battle before even Torkel can show up. Like, his boats are like coming in, his fleet, and then basically the battle's already won, and that kind of makes Torkel mad when he shows up and realizes that Vane, the man he was sent after to kill, was already dead. But Garm is chasing down Torfin, trying to fight him, and Torfin's like, he's not trying to fight. And then Torfin is trying to help all the women and children escape. And yeah, he ends up escaping Garm, I believe, but then Garm goes after, later on, he goes and hunts down Torfin's friends and kidnaps them. What ends up happening is Garm basically kidnaps all of Torfin's friends, like Gudrid and Einar and Leif Erikson, and they're thrown in a prison cell in Jomsborg. But he was kind of like, I'm holding your friends captive. You have to fight me for real, or else, I'm going to kill them. So, also, Torkel, even though he was about to show up to fight Vane's forces, after Vane dies, it's like an excellent show of like his leadership and like charisma and how men want to follow him, because he just, instead of fighting Vane's forces, he basically absorbs his army and they just willingly join him, because that's how good of a leader Torkel is. And so now, since Torkel just doesn't care, he just wants to fight, he's going to turn on Floki, and now he's fighting Floki. Even though he was just hired by Floki, he just doesn't care. He's now, alright, since this battle's won, who can I fight now? Alright, let's go fight Floki. Like, Torkel's just insane also. Torfin then learns of what happened to his friends, and so him and Bug Eyes, who was left behind by Garm to deliver the message to Torfin, set off to Jomsborg to go rescue their crew. Also, Sigurd is definitely a official member of Torkel's crew now. He's actually entrusting him with a mission, or was it the other guy? I can't remember. But anyway, Sigurd's actually kind of important to Torkel's crew now. And we also learned that Floki's grandson, Balder, actually doesn't want anything to do with the Joms Vikings. He doesn't want to become chieftain. It's just something that he was kind of thrown into. And he knows that Torfin is a kind-hearted guy, and so he kind of wants Torfin to become the chieftain. So he, from the inside, sets up a plan to help Torfin's friends escape. And yeah, there's this huge battle that's coming though. Torkel is right outside of Jomsborg, and it's just knocking on the door. Floki's on the inside, you know, and it's like, what are you doing? And I thought we were on the same side. Torkel just, again, doesn't care, and this massive battle just ensues. Using the chaos of the battle and everything as cover, Torfin's crew, led by Balder at the moment, finds a way to escape the impenetrable fortress that is Jomsborg through this well, and everybody escapes except for Gudrid. Gudrid's left behind because, well, they were about to get caught by a guard, and so she's forced to be, like, her cover is that she's one of Balder's, like, maids, and together, you know, they're trapped. So Einar and Leif Erikson, they manage to escape, and, you know, they're running through the battle on the outside of the wall, trying to not get hit and stay away from everybody, but Leif Erikson gets hit, I think, once or twice with an arrow in his leg, and so Leif Erikson, although not dead, he's not in good shape, and Einar kind of has to carry him all the way back to Torkel's camp, I guess. There, Torfin shows up and meets with Einar and Leif Erikson, as well as Sigurd is there, so they all are meeting at the same place. They all know each other, and they're trying to figure out, well, Einar tells them that everybody escaped except for Gudrid, and that she's still stuck in there. So Torfin comes up with a plan. He's going to go in and rescue Gudrid, and then Sigurd's like, well, I'm coming too, because she's my wife. Torfin comes up with a plan, and he sneaks into Jomsborg with Hild through the same way that they, Einar and Leif Erikson had escaped, which is through the well. And there he meets, like, this maid who brings them to Gudrid and Balder. And then this part sort of sets up, like, a romance aspect of the story, because Gudrid starts to, like, catch feelings for Torfin, because, you know, he was like, he gave her a hug and was like, oh, I'm so glad you're all right, or whatever. And then she's like, oh my god, Torfin, oh my god, you know how it is. So now Balder, you know, he tells Torfin, hey, you know, I don't want anything to do with this, I think you should be chieftain. And then Torfin was like, nah, fam. And then Floki shows up. And then now that Torfin knows that Floki was the one who had his dad killed, he pulls out a sword and is about to kill Floki, but then Balder jumps in front of him, and he's like, yo, if you're gonna kill anybody, kill me, because, you know, my grandfather was just doing this to make me happy. So Torfin, like, drops the sword and, like, snaps out of it. If he would have killed Floki, then Hild would have shot him right in the back of the head, because that was part of their whole agreement, is that Torfin has to continue to live this life of peace, or else, you know, he would have essentially lied to Hild, because, you know, he told her that he left that life behind. So, you know, he continues to live and doesn't go out, you know, go through with his revenge. From within the gates, they now have to try and escape, but as they're walking through the town, they realize that the guards are filling in the well, because they noticed that, hey, you know, people were breaking in through here, because the people that were behind Torfin was Sigurd, who was secretly following them, and then Sigurd got caught low-key. So now Sigurd and his friend, I guess, they're on the run throughout the castle. Everybody's looking for the intruder, and they're filling in the well. So now they have to find a new way to get out. And Balder and Torfin, again, come up with a plan that they're going to use Balder as a fake hostage to get Floki to open up the gates. And that's exactly what they do, but everything, kind of screws up because Sigurd isn't aware of this plan. And also, Garm shows up, and he's trying to fight Torfin. So Torfin kind of has to be like, all right, everybody get out of here. I'll take care of Garm. And so there's this huge, big fight between Garm with his spear and Torfin with his bare hands. And it's just an awesome fight on the rooftops. And Torfin ends up beating the crap out of Garm and incapacitating him temporarily. This whole section of the story ends with Torfin beating Garm, but then Torkel breaks in because the gates were opened. So Torkel's forces sneak in through the gates. Well, they don't really sneak in, but charge through, and they basically sack Jomsborg. Torkel ends up having to fight against this other massive dude, a guy who's bigger than Torkel and is a little mentally retarded, who's basically just a bear, just a massive bear of a man. Torkel fights him and wins, and they take Floki and Balder hostage, for real, and they end up making Torfin the chieftain. And what ends up happening, though, is Torfin, with this new title and all this power and Torkel's help, he basically tells all of the people to they're not going to execute Floki or Balder, they're just going to exile them. And then B, they have to tear down Jomsborg, they're not doing that no more. And then C, there was something else. And then the third order that Torfin gave was that they would be disbanding the Jomsvikings. And so now, everything, this huge battle is over, and they kind of all go their separate ways. And then Torfin and everybody head back to Iceland. But I think before they... Actually, no, that's incorrect. Before they go to Iceland, it isn't showed, but it's more so implied through conversation. They end up making it to Constantinople, trading the narwhal horns, and then they head back to Iceland. And this is where Volume 12 begins, and the end of this arc. Now that everybody is pretty much back in Iceland, we see that Sigurd kind of cuts ties with his father after, he fails to bring back Gudrid, because something happened before where, Gudrid was supposed to come back with him willingly, she told him, and then, he told her, well, go tell Torfin that you love him and see what he says. He's probably just gonna reject you, but try it. And so she left, and without Sigurd even getting an answer, he decides to just leave. He just leaves her there. He's like, he realizes that, maybe she doesn't want to do this, so whatever, I'll leave her. So he just dips and goes back to Iceland and accepts defeat, tells Halfdan, I couldn't bring back Gudrid, so therefore I'm not going to step back on here. Halfdan doesn't take this lightly, and instead he says that that's stupid and just has him captured and brings him back on land, but as a prisoner, only because he is Halfdan's only heir, so he needs him there to be able to inherit everything. Sigurd is rescued from captivity by his actual original wife, because he had two wives. And he vows to only be with her, so they run off into the night pretty much, and just they escape, and they end up showing back up later on, and we find out Sigurd had a child, and but Torfin shows back up on Iceland, and there we learn while they were away, him and Gudrid unofficially got married. So now Gudrid and Torfin are kind of a thing, which, if you guys didn't know anything prior about the Vinland sagas and about the real-life Torfin Karlsefni, then, that would have been like, oh, okay. But me, I actually read up on Torfin Karlsefni a few times, and I had prior knowledge about what actually happened. So, Gudrid is actually the real-life Torfin Karlsefni's wife. So, when Gudrid was introduced in this series, I kind of already knew what was going to happen there. So yeah, interesting stuff there. She is based on a real historical figure, which is cool. So, together, they're raising Carly as their own son, which is pretty cool. Also, Leif Erikson retired, and but now that they're back in Iceland, they meet up with the mom, or Torfin's mom and sister, and, they have a reunion again. But then they go back to Halfdan to, tell him, hey, we conquered your challenge that you gave us, and now you've got to help us, fund Vinland. And he's like, I bet, pretty much. He's a stingy old dude, but he ends up helping them. But first, they have, an official wedding for Torfin and Gudrid. So that happens. They are finally actually husband and wife. After all this happens, there is some trouble because Torfin is trying to introduce this idea of Vinland to all these Vikings, which is really difficult since it's the opposite of what they believe in. So he goes to the Thing, which is their, town meeting pretty much, and explains to them, we're trying to get people to come with us to Vinland, but you're not allowed to bring your swords. And so now all these Viking dudes are like, my sword is my life. I can't do that. And so people are challenging Torfin's philosophies and ideas, which is, difficult. We are introduced to a really interesting and funny character at this point in the story. Her name is Cordelia, and basically one of Halfdan's slaves happens to be the son of Torkel. Now, I'm hesitant here because, well, it's his son, biological son, who's a female. But there's kind of a funny story behind it, and especially how Torkel is described and portrayed through the eyes of this character in the flashbacks and stuff. He's sort of portrayed as an unstoppable force, just a storm, or a giant of sorts. It's just really funny. But basically, Torkel, he had a wife who, was pregnant, and she gave birth, and then Torkel, if it was a boy, Torkel was going to take the child and raise it to be a great warrior. So the wife lied and said that it was a daughter. And so he was like, oh, well, then I can't take it then. You raise it to be another woman. But it was a boy. So, but because Torkel, kept coming back to check up on his child, here and there, she had to continue to be able to continue this ruse. So she raised the boy as a daughter. Which was fine at first, because, a young boy that looks somewhat feminine, I guess, and is able to pull that off. But as the boy grew, he slowly became to look more like Torkel. And so if you just imagine Torkel in a dress, that's basically this character. And if Torkel acted ladylike, and it's just really funny and comedic. And so anyway, it's one of Halfdan's slaves because she got lost at sea or something like that, and then was thrown into the slave market. So she wants to join Torfin, but then Torfin was, had to ask Halfdan, and then Halfdan was like, oh, she's so strong, or he's so strong, whatever. One of my best slaves, I don't know if I can, let her go. He ends up letting her go with them. And this volume, or book 12, ends with Torfin setting out for Vinland, and yeah, we're entering the final arc, the Vinland arc, and it's just a really cool moment at the very end here. I don't know if I can show it, but Torfin's just ripped, and he just took a shower. He's naked, but it censors stuff, but he's just ripped, and then he shows up later on the ship, and I'll just show you guys the final panel here. It's just him on the ship, just ready to show up, So yeah, that is Vinland Saga's Eastern Exploration arc. Honestly, a very good arc. I still like Farmland more. And what's really interesting is everybody loves the prologue, but honestly, so far, I mean, it's only 3 arcs, but it's in my opinion, the worst of the 3 arcs. I mean, Farmland's up here, then probably Eastern Exploration arc, and then the prologue. Like, the prologue is fantastic. Like, the entire series is fantastic, but the prologue is honestly the weakest bit, and that's the part that everybody loves. So that gives me very high hopes for when the rest of the anime gets adapted. I think Vinland Saga will become a true classic and masterpiece. It already sort of is, in my eyes, a masterpiece, the anime at least. Well, I mean the manga too, but the first season of the anime was just fantastic. But as the rest of it gets adapted, it'll go down in history as a masterpiece. That's all I'm saying. I can't wait. But yeah, this arc was just very good. A lot of cool characters were introduced. Again, like I said, Hild, awesome character. We get more, of course, Torkel being Torkel. Love that guy. We don't see a whole lot of Canute in this arc. We see him like once or twice in a flashback. That's about it. But yeah, Gudrid's an interesting character. We see more of my boy Einar. Yeah, and Sigurd is an interesting character too. But yeah, very awesome arc, and that's about it for my review. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. First video back for a while, and I've got more videos coming, so stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.